My sister-in-law poured near-boiling coffee across my 3-year-old daughter's face, and my husband told me to apologize for ruining his family's Sunday brunch. For several seconds after it happened, the living room was so quiet that I could hear coffee dripping from the edge of the glass table onto Elaine Holloway's cream-colored rug. My daughter, Ellie, didn't scream right away. Her whole body locked against mine, her small fingers clawing at the front of my blouse while her mouth opened without sound. The skin along her left cheek and jaw was already turning a furious red. "Call 911, I said. No one moved. Sloane stood beside the dollhouse with the silver carafe still in her hand. She wore a pale cashmere sweater, diamond studs, and an expression of mild annoyance, as if Ellie had spilled juice on her carpet instead of being burned. Her daughter, Paige, stared from behind the sofa. A tablet sat on a little stand nearby, its camera pointed toward the enormous wooden dollhouse Sloane had bought for her. "It slipped," Sloane said. She grabbed for Paige's toy and knocked my arm. "I saw you tilt it." My voice came out low and unfamiliar. "You looked at her, and you tilted it." My father-in-law, Frank, rose from his leather chair and planted himself between Sloane and me. He was a broad man in his late 60s who had spent 30 years making subcontractors fear the sound of his voice. "Control yourself, Nora." The child was told not to touch anything. Ellie finally made a broken, animal sound against my neck. "She needs an ambulance." Elaine pressed a napkin to the wet rug. "Not in front of the neighbors. Take her to urgent care if you're determined to make a scene." I looked past them to my husband. Grant was standing in the hallway, one hand around his phone. His face had gone pale, but he would not meet my eyes. "Grant," I begged. "Call 911 for your daughter." He looked at Sloane, then at his father. "Maybe we should all calm down first." That sentence ended my marriage, though the paperwork would come later. I carried Ellie out of the Holloway's immaculate home in Paradise Valley with no shoes on my feet and my purse somewhere inside. The February air felt cool against the coffee soaking my blouse. Behind me, through the closing door, I heard Sloane tell Paige, "It's okay, sweetheart. They're leaving now." I put Ellie into her car seat with hands that shook so badly I couldn't fasten the buckle. A landscaping truck was parked across the street. The driver saw me struggling, ran over, and called 911 before anyone in my husband's family did. He stayed until the paramedics arrived. A stranger knelt on hot pavement beside my car and spoke softly to my child while the people who shared her last name watched from behind tinted windows. At Phoenix Children's Emergency Department, a nurse took Ellie from me and asked what had happened. I told her the truth. When she asked whether the burn was accidental, I said no. That one word changed the room. Another nurse appeared. A hospital social worker came in. Photographs were taken. Questions were repeated carefully. I answered each one while the smell of coffee remained trapped in my hair. Grant arrived 47 minutes later. He did not ask to see Ellie first. He closed the curtain behind him and said, "What did you tell them?" I stared at him. "Your daughter is in a treatment room." Sloane says Ellie lunged at Paige. "Mom says you were already worked up. If you accuse my sister of doing it on purpose, this becomes a police matter." "It is a police matter." He rubbed both hands over his face. "Nora, think. My dad has business partners. Sloane works with seniors. An accusation like that could destroy her career." She burned Ellie's face. "It was an accident. You didn't even see it." His eyes flicked away, and I felt something colder than fear move through me. "Where were you, Grant? You came out of the hallway right after it happened. Why weren't you in the living room?" "Dad asked me to look at a bid. There was no bid on your phone." "Stop interrogating me." The curtain opened before I could answer. My father, Miguel Reyes, stepped inside wearing steel-toed boots and a fluorescent construction vest over his work shirt. He had driven straight from a job site in Tempe. White concrete dust streaked his forearms. Behind him was Naomi Patel, an attorney he had known since she represented his crew after a wage dispute years earlier. She wasn't a criminal lawyer, and she said so immediately, but she knew how to tell frightened people what to preserve and whom to call. My father looked at the coffee stains on my blouse. Then he looked at Grant. "Did you see what happened?" he asked. Grant straightened. "My sister explained." "I didn't ask what your sister explained. Did you see it?" "No." "Then the only eyewitness in this room is my daughter. You should be asking how your little girl is, not protecting a grown woman from a question." Grant's jaw tightened. "This is a family situation. A 3-year-old with a burn on her face is not a family secret." The doctor came in before Grant could reply. Ellie had a deep partial thickness scald along her left cheek, lower ear, and jaw. Her eye had been spared by inches. She would need ongoing wound care, follow-up with a burn specialist, and likely scar treatment. The doctor chose every word with clinical restraint. That made them hurt more. There was no dramatic music, no warning, just a calm professional explaining that my child might carry what Sloane had done for the rest of her life. My father turned toward the wall. His shoulders rose once, then settled. When he faced us again, his eyes were wet. "Grant," he said, "your daughter may wear your family's decision on her face. Choose what kind of father you're going to be before she wakes up." Grant left without answering. I stayed beside Ellie's bed that night. She slept in short, medicated stretches, waking whenever the dressing pulled or a monitor beeped. At 2:13 a.m., she touched the edge of the bandage and whispered, "Aunt Sloane was mad at me." I leaned so close that my forehead rested against hers. "Why was she mad, baby?" I touched the little house. "Did you bump her arm?" Ellie's eyes filled. "No. She said bad girls get hot." The hospital social worker heard her because she was standing just outside the curtain. She came in slowly, introduced herself again, and documented the statement without turning my child into a spectacle. I watched the pen move across her form and understood that the Holloways had made their first mistake. They believed Ellie's age made her powerless. They had forgotten that small children sometimes tell the truth with terrifying simplicity. At dawn, Grant sent one text: "We need to agree on what happened before you make this worse." I did not answer. I opened our joint checking account to pay the first pharmacy charge. The balance was $11.42. The night before, it had held $48,360, most of it from the sale of the small condo I owned before our marriage. At 1:07 a.m., Grant had transferred $48,000 into an account in his name only. My hands stopped shaking. Rage can feel hot, but the kind that changes your life is often perfectly cold. Naomi photographed the screen and told me not to warn him. She helped me contact a family law attorney, a victim advocate, and the detective assigned after the hospital report. My father drove to our townhouse with me to collect clothes, Ellie's favorite stuffed rabbit, her insurance card, and the folder where I kept financial records. Grant was there, waiting at the kitchen island with a document already printed. "Mom had a cardiac episode last night," he said. "You did that. Your sister burned Ellie. My mother is in the hospital because you sent police to the house. Where is our money?" He slid the document across the counter. It was a temporary parenting agreement prepared by one of Frank's attorneys. It said Ellie would stay with me, but Grant would have unrestricted visits, including at his parents' home. In exchange, he would release funds for medical expenses. The language was neat, professional, and monstrous. "You emptied the account to make me sign this? I protected marital assets because you're acting irrationally. Sign it, and we can start fixing things." My father took one step forward. I put out my arm to stop him. For the first time, I saw Grant clearly. He wasn't confused. He wasn't trapped between two families. He had chosen leverage before the smell of coffee had even left our clothes. "You can explain that transfer to a judge," I said. Grant's calm cracked. "If you drag Sloane through court, my family will make sure you have nothing. Dad knows everyone who matters in this city. You have a part-time catering job and a father who swings a hammer. Don't confuse being angry with being powerful." My father had supervised commercial construction crews for 26 years, but he let the insult pass. He picked up Ellie's rabbit from the sofa and carried it to the car as carefully as if it were evidence. I took my laptop, tax records, passport, and one framed photograph from Ellie's birth. Before I left, I looked at the man I had loved for 7 years. "You think power is making a mother choose between medicine and safety," I told him. "You're about to learn what power looks like when she refuses." I moved into my parents' small ranch house in Mesa, back into the bedroom where I had studied for community college exams. My mother, Teresa, put clean sheets on the bed and moved her sewing table into the garage so Ellie could have space to play. My father installed a lock on the side gate. Neither of them asked how long we would stay. The next 6 days were measured in medication schedules, dressing changes, and phone calls. Ellie developed a fear of kettles, coffee machines, even steam rising from soup. She woke screaming whenever fabric brushed her cheek. I learned to wash wounds while singing the same Spanish lullaby my mother had sung to me, though I used only English when nurses were present because I had spent years making myself smaller around the Holloways and could not stop doing it overnight. Sloane told police the carafe had been lukewarm. Elaine said I had been in the bathroom and could not have seen clearly. Frank claimed I had always resented their family. Grant said Ellie was active and prone to grabbing objects. Each statement was polished enough to sound reasonable by itself. Together, they formed a wall. Then the wall began to lean on me. Anonymous complaints reached the county health department about my home catering business. A private investigator parked near my parents' house and photographed my mother taking Ellie to the backyard. A review appeared online accusing me of serving spoiled food at a school event I had never catered. Grant canceled the credit card I used for gas. Frank's attorney sent a letter suggesting my emotional volatility placed Ellie at risk. For 2 hours one night, I sat on the laundry room floor and believed them. Not the lies, but the message beneath them. They had money, connections, time, and the confidence of people who had rarely heard no. I had a burned child, $11.42 in a joint account, and 4 catering clients who could disappear after one ugly rumor. My mother found me there. She sat beside me without asking me to stand. When you were 9, she said, a teacher told you to stop translating for the new girl because it slowed the class. You translated anyway. You came home crying, but you did it again the next day. This isn't 4th grade, Mom. No. Now the girl who needs your voice is your daughter. The following morning, Naomi called. There's someone you need to meet, she said. Her name is Denise Carter. She works at Willow Crest, the senior living community where Sloan runs resident programs. She says what happened to Ellie did not surprise her. Denise agreed to meet in the back booth of a diner near Sky Harbor Airport. She was 46, with tired eyes and hands roughened by sanitizer. She kept checking the parking lot. Sloan humiliates anyone she thinks can't fight back, she said. Residents, aides, kitchen workers. She calls it maintaining standards. Last fall she left Mrs. Bell strapped in a transport chair for almost 2 hours because the woman spilled tea on a donor. When I objected, Sloan cut my schedule. Did anyone document it? Naomi asked. Denise nodded. I started recording staff meetings after she threatened to say I stole medication. I have audio of her mocking residents and ordering us to alter activity logs. But that's not why I called. She placed her phone on the table and played a recording from 3 weeks earlier. Sloane's voice was unmistakable. That little girl has no boundaries, she said. Nora lets her put sticky hands on everything because she wants Ellie to feel entitled to our family. One day somebody is going to teach both of them where they belong. Another woman laughed nervously. Sloane continued. Paige is getting the dollhouse Sunday. If Nora's kid touches it, I swear she'll remember not to do it twice. My coffee went cold between my hands. It wasn't proof of exactly what she had planned. It was worse than a random insult and less than a confession, the kind of evidence that could open a door without carrying us through it. Denise said she would cooperate, but only if her identity could be protected as long as possible. Her 12-year-old son had kidney disease, and she depended on Willow Crest's insurance. If Sloane fires me, I lose the specialist, she said. I hate that this is what I'm asking after what she did to your baby. You're asking to keep your child safe, I told her. I understand that better than anyone. We left separately. In the parking lot, Naomi gripped my shoulder. This gives the detective a reason to dig deeper, but Sloane will say it was exaggeration. We still need evidence tied to that room. I remembered Paige's tablet on its stand, facing the dollhouse. There may be a video, I said. By the time the detective requested it, Sloane claimed the tablet had been broken during the confusion and thrown away. That evening, Grant called from an unknown number. His voice was softer than it had been since the hospital. Come home, Nora. We can put Ellie in the best scar clinic in the country. Dad will pay for everything. What does he want in return? Withdraw the accusation that Sloane did it deliberately. Say you were panicked and couldn't see the angle. And the tablet? There was a pause. So small another person might have missed it. What tablet? Paige was recording the dollhouse. Grant inhaled. Did you destroy it? I asked. You need to stop inventing things. You knew it was there. He hung up. 5 minutes later, I received a photograph from a number I did not recognize. It showed a black tablet wrapped in a dish towel inside a garage cabinet. Under the photograph were 6 words, Sloane lied. I saved it first. Then I called the detective. The message had come from Daniel, Sloane's husband. He refused to speak by phone, but he agreed to meet Detective Lena Brooks at a grocery store parking lot before sunrise. I waited at my parents' house with every light off, staring at the clock as if I could pull time forward. At 6:41 a.m., Detective Brooks called. We have the tablet, she said. Daniel surrendered it voluntarily. It appears someone attempted to erase it. Do not contact anyone in the Holloway family. Was the video there? Our digital unit will examine it. That's all I can tell you right now. Relief lasted less than 10 minutes. Then a process server knocked on my parents' door with papers seeking emergency parenting time for Grant. His filing accused me of withholding Ellie, coaching her to make allegations, and surrounding her with people hostile to her father. Attached were screenshots of messages I had sent during our marriage when I was tired, angry, or afraid. One said, I can't keep letting your family treat me like dirt. Another said, sometimes I wish I could take Ellie and disappear. They had removed the next sentence, not from you, from the way they control everything. My new attorney, Rachel Kim, explained that selective screenshots were not proof, but they were designed to create noise at the worst moment. They want you reacting instead of documenting, she said. Don't give them the reaction. I wanted to drive to Paradise Valley, pound on Elaine's carved front door, and make each of them look at Ellie's bandages. Instead, I created a timeline. Every insult I remembered. Every time Sloane called Ellie grabby. Every Sunday when Grant vanished into his father's office. Every transfer, cancelled card, anonymous complaint. And threat. My mother brought food I forgot to eat. My father printed bank records at the office trailer after his shift. Rachel filed for temporary orders and the return of the transferred funds. At the first family court hearing, Grant wore a navy suit and the sorrowful expression he used at funerals. He told the commissioner he loved Ellie and had been excluded during a crisis. He offered to pay for her care if I stopped restricting contact. Rachel placed the transfer record on the screen. Mr. Holloway removed $48,000 from a joint account 5 hours after his daughter was injured, then conditioned access to medical funds on an agreement allowing the child to return to the home where the injury occurred. Grant's attorney called it asset preservation. The commissioner called it troubling. Grant received supervised visits at a family center. The $48,000 was frozen pending review, including the account where he had moved it. He was ordered to maintain Ellie's health insurance and pay a share of uncovered treatment costs. It was not victory. It was oxygen. Grant cornered me in the courthouse hallway after the attorney stepped away. "You embarrassed me in there," he whispered. "You did that yourself. If Mom dies, Ellie will grow up knowing you destroyed her grandmother. If your mother dies, it will not change who held the carafe." He looked over my shoulder toward Rachel. "You're enjoying this. My family is falling apart, and you're enjoying it." That was how Grant survived himself. Any boundary became cruelty. Any consequence became persecution. If I had cried, he would have called me unstable. Because I stood straight, he called me cold. "I have spent every night wondering whether our daughter will be afraid of her." "On reflection," I said, "there is nothing here for me to enjoy." His face shifted then, not into guilt but panic. "What did Daniel give the police?" I did not answer. Daniel moved out of the Paradise Valley house that afternoon. He had lived with Sloane and Paige in a guest wing while their own home was being remodeled. According to Detective Brooks, he claimed he found the tablet in the garage after hearing Frank tell a handyman to dispose of an old electronics box. Daniel hid it before the handyman arrived. He also admitted that Paige had been filming a pretend unboxing video before brunch. "Why did he wait?" I asked. "He says he was afraid Sloane would keep him from his daughter," the detective replied. "Fear explains delay. It doesn't erase it." The digital unit found no playable video on the device. The recent files had been deleted, the recycle folder cleared, and the casing damaged near the memory chip. There was no guarantee anything could be recovered. Sloane learned that Daniel had surrendered the tablet and filed for divorce. She accused him of conspiring with me. Frank removed Daniel from 2 family business accounts. Elaine left me a voicemail from the hospital. "You have always wanted to divide my children," she said in a weak, breathless voice. "Now you've turned Daniel against his wife. Whatever happens to this family is on you." I listened once, saved it for my attorney, and never played it again. Ellie's first supervised visit with Grant lasted 19 minutes. I watched through one-way glass while a monitor sat in the room. Grant brought an expensive stuffed horse and a balloon that said "Get well soon." Ellie stayed near the door, clutching her old rabbit. "Daddy missed you," he said. She looked at the horse but did not touch it. "Why didn't you help me?" she asked. Grant's face collapsed. For a moment I saw the man I had once trusted. He knelt, but Ellie backed away. "Daddy didn't understand what happened." "Mommy told you." He glanced at the mirror, knowing I might be behind it. There were a lot of people talking. I was hot. The monitor ended the visit when Grant began asking whether I had told Ellie to be afraid of Aunt Sloane. He left carrying the unopened horse. I sat in my car afterward and sobbed until my ribs hurt, not because I wanted him back, but because I finally accepted that Ellie could ask the perfect question and he would still choose an excuse. 2 days later, Elaine died from complications after a second heart attack. Grant called at 4:18 a.m. "My mother is dead," he said. "Are you satisfied?" I closed my eyes. Elaine had belittled me for years. She had told police I imagined what I saw. She had wiped coffee from her rug while Ellie's skin burned. Still, I felt the sober sadness that comes when a person runs out of chances to become better. "I'm sorry your mother died," I said. "I am not responsible for her death. Don't come to the funeral." Frank's office emailed an invitation 6 hours later, likely so the family could later say I had chosen not to attend. Rachel advised me to stay away. My father agreed. My mother, who had endured every Holloway holiday with quiet grace, surprised us both. "Go," she said. "Not for them. Go because they are rewriting the story in every room you leave empty." Ellie stayed with my parents. I wore a plain black dress and sat in the back row of the stone church where Grant and I had married. The same white lilies lined the altar. The same stained glass light crossed the aisle. I remembered Elaine adjusting my veil before the ceremony and whispering that my mother should stand farther from the photographer because her dress was too bright. At the time, I had laughed from nerves. I had spent 7 years translating contempt into something I could survive. During the reception in the parish hall, Sloane approached me carrying a glass of water. People made room for her as if grief had crowned her. "You killed my mother," she said loudly. "You and that undisciplined child." The room went still. I felt every phone turn toward us. Sloane wanted anger. She wanted a clip of the working-class daughter-in-law screaming at a funeral. "Your mother needed medical care," I said. "My daughter needed it too. The difference is that I called for help." Sloane threw the water in my face. Daniel stepped between us. He smelled like whiskey and sleeplessness. "Stop it, Sloane. You don't get to defend her after stealing from your own daughter. I saved Paige's tablet from your father." Sloane's eyes flashed. "It never recorded anything." "Then why did you make Grant delete the video?" The words crossed the hall like a drop tray. Grant grabbed Daniel by the lapels. "Shut your mouth." I took out my phone. Grant slapped it from my hand. It struck the terrazzo floor and skidded beneath a table, the screen webbed with cracks. "You don't get to record my mother's funeral," he shouted. Several guests gasped. Daniel shoved him back. "Tell her," Daniel said. "Tell Nora why Sloane texted you to keep her out of the room." Grant went utterly still. Sloane grabbed Daniel's arm, but he pulled free. "I saw the family chat after the hospital," he said. Sloane wrote, "Keep Nora busy. I'm going to teach the little thief a lesson." Grant answered with a thumbs up. Then he deleted the thread from everyone's phones. I could not feel the water running down my neck anymore. Grant turned toward me. "I thought she meant she was going to take the doll away. I didn't know she would hurt Ellie." "You knew she wanted me out of the room." "It was a joke." "You answered her." I thought, "No. You didn't. That is the whole truth of you." Frank struck his cane against the floor and ordered security to remove Daniel and me. But half the room had heard. At least 3 people had recorded the confrontation. Grant could smash one phone, not every phone. Outside the church, Daniel leaned against a low wall and covered his face. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have stopped her." "Did you know what she planned?" "Not before. I saw her take the carafe back toward the kitchen after the coffee had cooled. She said she was reheating it because her mother liked it hot. I didn't connect it until Ellie screamed. Then Sloane told me I would lose Paige if I contradicted her." "Why did you send the tablet now?" "Because Paige asked me if she was bad for making a video. Sloane told her the police would take mommy away if she said she had recorded. My daughter is 4, and she thinks the truth can destroy a family. I can't let her grow up believing that." Detective Brooks obtained the funeral recordings that afternoon. Daniel gave a formal statement about the group chat. The original messages were gone from his phone, but the detective requested account and cloud records. Grant insisted his response had been innocent. Even if that were true, it proved he had helped Sloane isolate Ellie from me. Moments before the injury, then erased the exchange after he knew what had happened. The people who had called me irrational grew quieter. Then Sloane went after Denise. Willow Crest fired Denise for unauthorized recording and alleged privacy violations. Her insurance coverage was scheduled to end in 30 days. Someone left an envelope on her windshield containing photographs of her son entering his nephrologist's office. She called me from her car, fighting for breath. "I can't do this," she said. "I thought I could, but they know where Marcus goes. Call the detective now. Don't drive home." Naomi connected Denise with an employment attorney and a non-profit that helped families maintain treatment during coverage gaps. My catering clients organized a meal fundraiser without using Ellie's name or turning our case into entertainment. My father asked every foreman he trusted for temporary work Denise could do remotely. Within 4 days, strangers and coworkers had built a net beneath a woman the Holloways expected to fall alone. Denise did not withdraw. She delivered 19 recordings and 3 years of copied scheduling logs to state investigators. The material showed neglected complaints, falsified activity records, retaliation against aides, and a pattern of Sloane targeting residents. With limited family contact. One recording captured Frank telling Sloane that Willow Crest's owners would handle a complaint because he had helped renovate the facility below cost. Another included Sloane laughing that rules belong to people without attorneys. That investigation was separate from Ellie's case, but it stripped away the image Sloane depended on. She was placed on administrative leave. Former aides came forward. Families asked questions. Frank's name appeared in a review of vendor invoices and consulting payments. For the first time, the Holloways had more fires than they could smother. The family chat records arrived next. Sloane's message and Grant's thumbs up had been preserved in Daniel's cloud notification history. So had a later message from Grant, sent 12 minutes after I left for the hospital, delete Paige's video before Nora remembers it. Rachel read it to me in her office. I made her read it again. Not because I misunderstood. Because some betrayals are so complete that the mind rejects them as foreign objects. Grant had known there was a recording. While I held our screaming child in an ambulance, he had not asked whether Ellie could see. He had not searched for burn treatment. He had told his sister to erase the truth. I walked to the restroom, locked the door, and gripped the sink until the room stopped moving. In the mirror I saw a woman with tired eyes, unwashed hair, and a borrowed blazer. I had spent weeks wondering when my husband had stopped loving us. The message gave me an answer I did not expect. Love was no longer the useful question. A person could say he loved you and still sacrifice you to preserve his own comfort. What mattered was what he chose when love became inconvenient. Rachel filed the record in family court. Detective Brooks sent it to the prosecutor reviewing Sloane's case and referred Grant's deletion request for further investigation. Grant's supervised visits were paused pending a child safety assessment. He appeared at my parents' house that night despite the order limiting contact. My father saw him first on the doorbell camera. I stepped onto the porch while my parents stayed inside with Ellie. Grant looked smaller without a suit. Rain darkened the shoulders of his gray sweatshirt. I panicked, he said. Dad was yelling. Sloane said it looked worse on video than it was. I thought if the clip disappeared, everyone could calm down and figure out the truth. The video was the truth. I didn't see the pour. You saw our daughter afterward. He flinched. You moved the money, I continued. You tried to trade it for access to her. You lied in court. You let your sister call Ellie a thief. At which point exactly were you only panicking? He stepped closer. I can testify against Sloane. I can tell them Dad ordered me to protect her. But you have to tell Rachel we can work on our marriage. Even his confession came with an invoice. Go home, Grant. I don't have a home. Dad blames me for the messages. Daniel hates me. Mom is dead. Ellie was burned, and you made her injury. About what you might lose. You're doing it again. He began to cry. For years, his tears would have pulled me across any distance. That night they stopped at the edge of the porch. I loved you, I said. But I will never again confuse your need for forgiveness with my duty to give it. My father opened the door behind me. Grant left. The digital lab worked on Paige's tablet for nearly 5 weeks. The local file could not be restored, but a forensic analyst found that the children's video app had automatically created a low-resolution cloud preview before the deletion. The account was controlled by Daniel, not Sloane. He signed the release. Detective Brooks asked me to view the clip before it was shown to attorneys. It lasted 2 minutes and 8 seconds. Paige's voice narrated the dollhouse from behind the tablet. Ellie entered the edge of the frame and asked if she could touch the tiny blue door. Sloane said, "Go ask your mother," though she knew I had gone to the bathroom. Then she lifted the carafe from behind the sofa. Ellie placed one finger on the roof. Sloane stepped closer. There was no lunge. No calichin. No slipping hand. Sloane looked toward the hallway to make sure I was gone, lowered the carafe, and poured. The clip ended when Paige knocked over the tablet as Ellie screamed. I had prayed for proof. When it finally appeared, I ran to the trash can and was sick. Detective Brooks stopped the video before replaying it. Her voice was gentle. You never have to watch that again. Will it be enough? It changes everything. For 5 weeks, the Holloways had described my daughter as wild, grabby, dishonest, coached, and dangerous. In 2 minutes and 8 seconds, a child's forgotten camera gave Ellie back the truth. Sloane was arrested the next morning at Willow Crest. News cameras waited outside because the investigation into the facility had already made her name public. I did not watch the footage. I was at Ellie's burn clinic learning how to massage the tightening skin beneath her jaw so it would not limit her movement as she grew. The prosecutor called during the drive home. The charges included intentional child abuse and aggravated assault. He warned me that a video did not make the process simple. The defense could challenge how it was recovered, argue about context, question witnesses, or delay. He did not promise a conviction. He promised that I would be told the truth about each step. That honesty steadied me more than the Holloway's expensive assurances ever had. Frank issued a statement through a public relations firm saying his family was heartbroken by a tragic accident being distorted for personal gain. Sloane's attorney suggested the clip began too late to show Ellie provoking her. Grant's attorney described his deletion message as an attempt to protect children's privacy. They kept changing the shape of the lie because they could no longer deny the image at its center. Then Daniel turned over the silver carafe. He had found it packed inside a box labeled Elaine's kitchen after the funeral. Sloane had told police she threw it away because seeing it was traumatic. Daniel had quietly kept the box when he moved out. A heat-damaged silicone grip and coffee residue could not prove intent by themselves, but the carafe's temperature retention specifications supported the doctor's conclusion that the liquid had been far hotter than Sloane claimed. More importantly, Daniel remembered seeing her pour cooled coffee out, refill the vessel from the boiling water dispenser, and carry it back to the living room. "I thought Elaine wanted fresh coffee," he told the prosecutor. "I saw what I expected to see. That's how people like Sloane survive. They train everyone around them to choose the harmless explanation." His words stayed with me. Grant had accused me of destroying a family by refusing the harmless explanation. But a family that requires everyone to rename cruelty is already destroyed. It only still looks beautiful in photographs. Sloane's preliminary hearing began 4 months after the brunch. I sat with Rachel and a victim advocate 2 rows behind the prosecutor. Sloane entered wearing a modest gray dress, no jewelry, and the careful face of someone auditioning for mercy. Frank sat directly behind her. Grant sat beside him until Daniel walked in. Then Grant moved to the aisle, leaving an empty seat between himself and his father. Detective Brooks testified about the hospital report, the tablet, and the recovered preview. The defense attacked the chain of custody. A digital analyst explained the metadata and account history. Daniel described hiding the device. Denise testified about Sloane's threats before the brunch. The judge allowed the recording in which Sloane said Ellie would remember not to touch the dollhouse twice. When the video played, I looked at Sloane instead of the screen. At first she remained still. Then the moment her own eyes shifted toward the hallway in the clip, her composure failed. Her jaw flexed. Her fingers dug into the table. She did not look shocked by the act. She looked furious that the room could finally see the calculation before it. Frank leaned forward and whispered something to her attorney. The defense then called Grant, hoping he could support the claim that Sloane had only meant to scare Ellie away from the toy. Under oath, he admitted receiving the message asking him to keep me occupied. He admitted replying. He admitted deleting the family chat and telling Sloane to delete the video. "Did your sister tell you she intended to burn the child?" the defense attorney asked. "No. Did you believe she would physically harm your daughter?" Grant looked at me for the first time all day. "I believed my sister was cruel to Nora and Ellie. I also believed admitting that would force me to choose. So I kept pretending I didn't know what I knew." Frank hissed his son's name from behind him. Grant turned toward the sound. "Dad, stop." It was the first time in 7 years I had heard him say those words to his father. The defense attorney tried again. "Mr. Holloway, please answer only the question. Did you know your sister would pour hot liquid on Ellie?" "No," Grant said. "But after she did, I helped hide it." The courtroom held its breath. His admission did not repair anything. It did not restore Ellie's skin or return the nights she woke afraid. But it broke the last protective layer around Sloane. Frank left before the hearing ended. He did not look at either of his children. The judge found sufficient evidence for the criminal case to proceed and continued the protective orders. Outside, reporters crowded around the courthouse steps. I walked through them without speaking. My story was not public property just because the Holloways had failed to bury it. Sloane rejected the first plea offer. Through her attorney, she demanded that the child abuse charge be reduced and that she receive no prison time. She claimed incarceration would harm Paige. Daniel responded through the custody court that Paige had already been harmed by being ordered to fear the truth. Paige began therapy. I gave consent for her therapist to share one message with Ellie. Paige knew Ellie had done nothing wrong. Ellie listened while sitting on my mother's lap. She did not fully understand why Paige could not visit, but she asked whether the dollhouse was safe. "A house can't decide to hurt someone," I said. "People decide." "Is Aunt Sloane bad?" I chose my answer carefully. "She made a very bad choice on purpose, and grown-ups are making sure she can't hurt you again." I did not want Ellie's childhood organized around monsters. Monsters made cruelty feel rare and supernatural. Sloane was a person who cared more about control than a child's pain. That truth was frightening, but it also meant ordinary. People could stop her. My divorce moved forward. The court traced the $48,000 and ordered the marital funds restored to a controlled account for legal living costs and Ellie's care. Records showed Grant had also transferred $6,500 to Frank's company as a consulting payment the morning after the injury. Frank returned it only after a subpoena was issued. The transaction drew attention in the broader vendor investigation, where reviewers were already examining payments connected to Willow Crest. I did not receive a mansion or a fantasy settlement. I received my share of the townhouse equity, protection from debts I had not authorized, child support calculated from Grant's income, and a requirement that he contribute to Ellie's treatment. Most important, the final parenting plan required professionally supervised contact until therapists and the court agreed it was safe to change. Grant was prohibited from bringing Ellie near Sloane or Frank. Rachel asked whether I wanted language allowing reconciliation counseling. "No," I said. That one word felt cleaner than revenge. Grant wrote Ellie letters instead. The monitor read them before visits. At first they were filled with promises, ponies, vacations, a pink bedroom, anything except an honest sentence. After months of court-ordered parenting work, the letters changed. I was there, and I did not help you. I believed being loyal to my family meant agreeing with the loudest person. You did nothing wrong. I kept each letter in a sealed box for Ellie to read when she was old enough. His growth, if it was real, belonged to him. I would not build my life around waiting for it. Denise's retaliation complaint ended in a settlement that protected her health coverage long enough for Marcus to continue treatment. Willow Crest replaced several managers and opened an independent review of resident care. Families filed civil claims. State regulators cited the facility for record failures and retaliation. Denise never celebrated. Every finding means somebody was ignored before us, she said. Frank's construction company lost a municipal contract when investigators found undisclosed vendor relationships and inflated invoices tied to renovation projects. Months later, prosecutors announced financial charges unrelated to Ellie's case. I felt no rush of pleasure. Frank had once said he knew everyone who mattered in the city. In the end, the documents mattered. The employees he had underestimated mattered. The people who kept copies mattered. Sloane changed her plea 3 weeks before trial. The prosecutor called me into a conference room and explained the agreement. She would plead guilty to a felony child abuse charge and admit that she intentionally poured dangerously hot liquid while Ellie stood beside the dollhouse. The judge would determine the prison term within an agreed range. A long-term protective order would keep her from Ellie. She would also be subject to conditions involving contact with minors after release. It means there won't be a trial, he said. You have the right to be heard before sentencing. Part of me had imagined a jury watching every lie collapse. Another part could not bear the thought of Ellie's image enlarged on a screen while strangers debated how much pain was visible. The plea did not give us back the months we had lost, but it placed the word intentional where Sloane had tried to put accident. Take it, I said. At sentencing, the courtroom was full but quiet. Daniel sat with Paige's guardian ad litem on one side. Denise sat near the back with Naomi. My parents were beside me. Grant arrived alone and chose a seat away from Frank, who was absent on advice from his own attorney. Sloane spoke before I did. She said she had been under stress from caring for her mother and managing conflict between the children. She described one terrible moment that did not reflect her heart. She cried when she mentioned Paige. She never said Ellie's name. The judge asked whether she accepted the factual basis of her plea. Her attorney touched her arm. Yes, Sloane whispered. Did you intentionally pour the hot liquid? For the first time since that Sunday, no one could answer for her. Yes. The word did not thunder. It barely crossed the room. Yet it reached every place her family had tried to hide it. When it was my turn, I carried no photograph to the podium. I did not need to display my child's injury to prove my pain. My daughter was 3, I said. She believed adults meant what they said when they called a house a family home. She touched a toy, and the defendant decided pain was an acceptable way to teach her rank. Then 4 adults watched her leave without calling for help. The injury was not only the coffee. It was the agreement afterward that her truth cost too much. Sloane stared at the table. For months, people described Ellie as aggressive because that story was more convenient than admitting a wealthy adult hurt a little girl. They called me unstable because a calm mother was useful only if she stayed silent. They offered medical care in exchange for obedience. They moved money, deleted messages, threatened witnesses, and blamed a dead woman's heart for a crime she did not commit. I paused and looked at Grant. His eyes were lowered. I am not asking the court to make Sloane suffer because Ellie suffered. I am asking the court to recognize that deliberate cruelty grows when everyone around it protects comfort over truth. My daughter needs to know that what happened to her has the right name and real consequences. She needs to grow up understanding that her body is not the price of admission to anyone's family. The judge imposed a prison sentence within the agreed range, followed by supervised release and the long-term protective order. He also ordered restitution for qualifying treatment expenses. His words were formal, measured, and unable to contain everything, but one sentence stayed with me. A child's smallness is not an invitation to exercise power. It is a demand that adults exercise restraint. Sloane turned before a deputy led her away. For a second, our eyes met. I expected hatred. What I saw was disbelief. She had spent her life making other people absorb the consequences of her choices. She still seemed unable to understand why I had refused. Outside the courtroom, Grant asked if he could speak to me. My father tensed, but I nodded. I testified, Grant said. You did. I told the truth even though it cost me my father and my sister. The truth did not cost you your family. Your choices did. He swallowed. Is there any chance for us? There had been a time when that question would have shattered me. Now it only made me tired. There may be a chance for you to become a safer father, I said. That depends on what you do for years when no one applauds you. There is no chance for our marriage. He nodded slowly. I understand. I hope someday you do. I left with my parents before the reporters reached the hallway. Justice did not arrive as one clean morning. It came in appointments, invoices, nightmares, and tiny changes. Ellie's scar darkened before it began to fade. Some days she refused to look in the mirror. Some days she decorated the edge of her compression garment with removable stars. She worked with a child therapist who never made her retell more than she wanted. One morning, about 8 months after the burn, she stood on a stool in my parents' bathroom while I applied sunscreen to her cheek. "Mommy, is my face broken?" she asked. My hand stopped. In the mirror, the scar curved from below her ear toward her jaw, pink and smooth against her brown skin. I wanted to promise it would vanish. I wanted to erase every child who might stare and every adult who might ask the wrong question. Instead, I gave her something sturdier than a promise I could not control. "No, baby. Your face is yours, and it is beautiful. That line shows where your skin worked very hard to heal." She touched it with one careful finger. "My strong line. Your strong line." She smiled at herself. From then on, that was what we called it. With my share of the restored money and a small loan my parents insisted on structuring properly, I rented a narrow commercial kitchen near an elementary school in Mesa. I named the business Bright Table. We prepared simple lunches for after-school programs, teachers, and families who needed freezer meals during medical crises. Denise joined me first as an operations manager, then as a partner after the settlement gave her room to take the risk. She understood schedules, food safety, and frightened employees better than anyone I knew. My father built the front counter from reclaimed maple. My mother sewed bright cloth covers for the delivery baskets. Naomi handled the incorporation at a reduced rate and pretended not to notice when we sent food to her office every Friday. None of it was glamorous. The first summer, an air conditioner failed, 2 clients paid late, and I cried over a ruined batch of chicken soup. But each problem belonged to a life I had chosen. Grant continued supervised visits. Ellie eventually accepted the stuffed horse, though she renamed it Pickle and kept it at my parents' house. Some visits went well. In others, Grant slipped into self-pity and the monitor redirected him. I did not teach Ellie to hate him, and I did not teach her that forgiveness required access. Those were different lessons, and I wanted her to know both. Daniel moved with Paige into a small apartment near her preschool. The girls did not see each other for a long time. When their therapists agreed they were ready, they exchanged drawings through the adults. Paige drew a blue house with 2 open doors. Ellie drew 2 girls outside under a yellow sun. No one forced a reunion for the comfort of the grown-ups. One year after the brunch, Ellie and I walked past a neighborhood toy store. In the window stood a modest wooden dollhouse painted white with a blue front door. It was nothing like Sloane's imported showpiece. The roof sat slightly crooked, and one window box was missing a flower. Ellie stopped. I felt her hand tighten around mine. For a moment, both of us were back in that living room, measuring whether touching something beautiful could be dangerous. "Can we look?" she asked. We went inside. The owner set the dollhouse on a low table. Ellie stood several feet away until I knelt beside her. "You can touch it," I said. "Are you sure?" "Yes." She reached for the blue door, then pulled her hand back. I waited. The store owner waited. No one rushed her, corrected her, or laughed. Finally, Ellie opened the door. "It has a kitchen," she whispered. "It does? Can it be my house?" I bought it. At home, my father repaired the crooked roof while Ellie chose tiny furniture. She put the kitchen table near a window and placed 2 miniature women, one older and one younger, beside a little girl with painted black hair. There was no father figure in the box, so she added a wooden horse. "This one is Pickle," she explained. That evening, I watched her play from the doorway. Sunlight moved across the floor. My mother chopped cilantro in the real kitchen. My father complained cheerfully about a cabinet hinge. Denise texted a photograph of the next day's Bright Table orders. It was an ordinary house filled with ordinary sounds, and nothing in my old life had ever felt so luxurious. People sometimes asked whether I forgave Sloane. They expected a clean answer because stories sound better when pain becomes wisdom on schedule. I stopped answering for other people's comfort. I learned that forgiveness, if it ever came, would not be a door Sloane could use to walk back into Ellie's life. It would be something private, shaped by time, with no power to cancel consequences. I learned that Grant's regret did not create an obligation for me. I learned that anger could protect without becoming a home. Most of all, I learned that justice was larger than watching Sloane lose. Justice was Denise speaking without losing her son's care. It was Paige learning that telling the truth had not destroyed her family, the lie had. It was my parents turning a small house into a place where Ellie never had to earn welcome. It was a judge using the word intentional. It was a blue wooden door opening beneath my daughter's hand. Sloane wanted to teach Ellie where she belonged. She did, though not in the way she intended. Ellie belonged wherever her safety mattered more than an adult's reputation. She belonged in rooms where love did not demand silence. She belonged in her own bright skin, strong line et al. And I belonged beside her, no longer asking powerful people for permission to call cruelty by its name.